What's up, my dude? Your friendly neighborhood Tony here. I just finished watching Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and I wanted to share my thoughts. So in today's video, I'm gonna go over the things I liked about the movie, the things I did not like about the movie, and then finally, what I would have done to make it better, for whatever that's worth. So for all of the one person that doesn't know what Black Panther Wakanda Forever is about, it is of course the sequel to the original Black Panther movie, and in this film we are following the family and friends of Chadwick Boseman's character, the Black Panther, as they deal with the loss of course, him as an actor and his character in the movie series. I will also say I'm not going to spoil anything at all about any of the major plot points in this movie outside of what you've already seen in the trailers. So let's go ahead and get started with the things I liked, and there are quite a few of them. For one, I think they did an incredible job shooting this movie. I think the cinematography, a lot of the imagery, a lot of the special effects looked absolutely gorgeous. Ryan Coogler, who's the director of both the original Black Panther and the sequel here, is doing an incredible job. I think he is a very, very talented director. And he's also just a really insightful guy. If you've ever seen any of his interviews, the way he talks about the thought processes that he considers when making a movie, it's very clear that he's not just someone who is throwing these things together or doing a big studio film without actually considering a lot of the intricacies of the story and of the characters. And in line with that, and in line with a lot of that thoughtfulness, you can also really tell that Ryan Coogler took a lot of time to explore different cultures in this movie. Now, of course, we've seen that in the original Black Panther movie where he takes a lot of like genuine African culture and blends it into this mythical world of Wakanda. But in this movie, we see that expanded into a lot of Mesoamerican culture as well, specifically with the character Namor, or as I knew him from the comic books, Namor, but I guess now we're kind of changing a little bit of the pronunciation. And Coogler does such a great job with connecting these make-believe worlds of Wakanda, or I guess not Atlantis, I forget what they call it in the movie, but it's something else, and connecting those with real actual historical events and locations. So much so that I remember hearing in an interview that there are 7 different languages spoken in this one movie. So he's really kind of expanding the cultural relevance of the world that he's building. In addition to, of course, Ryan Coogler just being an absolute awesome director, a lot of the actors and actresses did an incredible job. Of course, you have the legendary Angela Bassett, who is playing the Queen Mother, and she is amazing in this. There's a lot of chatter right now I'm seeing in a lot of reviews talking about her being a potential Oscar frontrunner, which is wild to consider, but she's just so talented and she really brings a lot of gravitas and genuine emotion to her character. It's really hard to ignore. Now, alongside Angela Bassett is really probably what I would consider to be the main character of this movie, Letitia Wright's Shuri, and she is also tremendous. She carries a lot of the emotional weight of this movie, as well as a lot of the forward momentum of the plot. It really kind of relies on her, and I think she absolutely knocks it out of the park. Really, as far as the cast is concerned, I can't think of a weak link. Now, we are going to kind of start to blend into the cons of the things that I did not necessarily like about this movie, but before we do, I want to make it very clear that, of course, I understand why they had to go the route that they went. You know, we tragically lost Chadwick Boseman, and they really just had to pivot completely off of that character. And I do really feel, and again, this is part of the positives, that they handled that in the most classy and meaningful way possible. You know, in this movie, they pay tribute to both his character T'Challa, but also to him as an actor, and I think they did that incredibly well. And I feel like with those challenges, they did really the best you could have hoped for in maintaining the story and kind of taking that forward with all of these characters. Now, that said, because of that, because we've lost the main character of this story, and because this movie kind of then has to go on from there, you can really tell that it feels like they're taking a lot of secondary and side characters, and they're not really sure how to evolve them into kind of like the primary focuses of the movie. I don't know if that sounds a little confusing, but essentially what it felt like was this is a story about the side characters. And although Letitia Wright did an incredible job in her role, it was still very much under this canopy of what we were missing, right? The shadow of that is looming over her throughout the entire movie. And although she did a great job, it's still there. And I can only hope that going forward, we can kind of grow from that and she can really come into her own. A couple of the other issues that I had with the movie didn't really have to do with that change in losing Chadwick, but they had more to do with the structure of the story. I feel like what we're seeing a lot lately with a lot of Marvel movies is that they have a need to take these individual films and make them into something much bigger. And because of that, there are a lot of pacing issues with this film. It feels like it drags on a lot longer than it needs to. I think the movie is something like 2 hours and 45 minutes, somewhere around there, which is very long for a comic book movie, particularly a comic book movie about an individual character. So this isn't like an Avengers film or something like that where it's expected to be a big, grand story with a ton of characters. This is, you know, a Black Panther film that is primarily focusing on this one character or group of characters. So really, to have it drag on for almost 3 hours it's a bit much. And if I felt that all 2 hours and 45 minutes of its runtime really served the main focus of the story, it probably wouldn't be as problematic, but because it felt like they were going off and exploring all these other avenues that they didn't really need to explore, it just kind of weighs it down. So again, I'm not going to spoil anything, but I will just say that in this movie, they do try to loop in different events and characters and things that they can then go off and make their own movies and TV shows about, and I really feel like that wasn't what they should have done here. So that comes down to, what do I think they should have done? Now, I will preface this with saying my opinion is not very important at all. I'm just some dude on the internet. I'm not a filmmaker. I'm not a writer. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. This is just my opinion. These are my thoughts after coming out of the movie theater. So based on the problems that I perceived this movie in having, how would I have fixed it? Well, for one, I think what you need to do is shrink down the story a bit, right? A lot of these Marvel movies lately have just been becoming big and bloated and expansive, and they're introducing all these characters and they're opening up the world and they're trying to explore all these different avenues. But here, because specifically we've lost our main character and our main actor, we need to kind of come back to center and build the world back up from there. Now, I'm not saying wipe everything that was done and just reboot the franchise. What I'm saying is do something like what they did with the original Iron Man movie or with Captain America Winter Soldier, where it's a smaller scale movie with things that are going to affect what happens down the road, but we're really just focusing on this group of people. Whether it's Iron Man, we're focusing solely on Tony Stark, or in Captain America Winter Soldier, we're focusing on Captain, Falcon's in there, and of course the Winter Soldier, but it's really a much smaller scale story. So they could have done something like that, where instead of trying to use this as an opportunity to expand the universe, they really focus on trying to rebuild who the main characters are in the story. And I feel like they did that at times throughout the movie. When we were really focused on Shuri and on Namor, that was kind of that nucleus, I guess. I don't know. That was the nucleus of the story, and that's when it was at its best. But then when you go off and start exploring how this is going to affect the world on a grander scale, it kind of gets lost in all of that. So for me, if they had just shrunk it down, if they had just made the story about a family dealing with a loss and a nation dealing with the loss of its leader, I feel like that would have been a really compelling story. You know, and we can still mix in Namor and kind of those parallels between Wakanda and his nation. We can do that, but instead of following the typical Marvel route nowadays and trying to turn that into something that is a global scale issue, just focus on those characters, focus on the emotions, and get us invested again. And I know Marvel has its timelines and they have to build things up to get to a certain arc, so maybe that's just not something that they had the time to do with this movie. But if you're just trying to make a good movie, I think that's the way you have to go. And I feel like that's kind of what we're losing with a lot of Marvel nowadays, is like they're less focused on just making a good movie and they're more focused on making a massive arc with all of these global scale and universe scale issues. But all in all, I did really enjoy Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I thought they did about as good as they could have hoped to have done with the circumstances that they were given. I think it was a gorgeous film. I think the action was fantastic. I'm really curious to see where they go from now. Although I would be lying if I didn't say I was a little concerned about the future of Marvel at this point. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see how it all turns out. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Am I way off on this, or do you have similar feelings about the movie? And also, what are you hoping to see next in the world, specifically of Black Panther? Make sure you let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, if you want to see more movie reviews, trailer reactions, ranking videos, I think I'm going to do a Chadwick Boseman ranking video in the coming days of all of his best movies. So if you want to see that, make sure you subscribe. All right, I'll catch you in the next one. Be good.